What if I were to suggest that you play a key role in the awakening world? And that you are watching this because you have heard the call. We can start right now by opening our hearts and minds. Welcome to the awakening world.
Good morning, everybody, and a very happy Sacred Sunday to you. I'm Love Coach Scott Katamas, and welcome. I want to welcome those of us who have come into our Zoom room. Let us know where you're from. And I want to welcome everybody who's watching on Facebook. That's most of you. So thank you to the Sign Network for carrying us out to about 100 groups and pages. Big thank you to Unify. We love our friends on Unify. And I will be checking periodically on my other device to see what's going on in the Unify chat box, and also anybody else watching. You know, if you can, come on into our Zoom room directly, because it's easiest for us to interact with you, especially if you're on one of the other Facebook groups and pages. And it's really, really easy. Just go to globalpeacetribe.com and register. And as soon as you register, you're going to get the links to all of our shows. We do a show every Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday morning. And we also do special events. And what we do is we'll take a topic, we'll take a theme, and we'll explore it over the course of the weekend. For example, last weekend, many of you joined us for our social and racial justice show. This weekend, we're exploring SoulPlay. Now, SoulPlay is a wonderful festival, and some of you have come to our previous shows this weekend, so you've had a chance to learn about it. But for those of you that are new, wait till you hear about this beautiful, wonderful festival that all of us who are participating today have been a part of. And deep breath. The masks are coming down. The pandemic, thank goddess, is winding down. And we can start connecting with each other. We can actually meet with people. We can hug each other. Like, this is happening. And I think for many of us, the SoulPlay Festival, it's going to take place in the second weekend of June here in the wine country of Northern California. It's going to be a place where a lot of us are going to be able to come together and connect. And you're going to learn all about SoulPlay today. So we've got three wonderful presenters, plus I see a lot of our friends like the Wild Abbot from Mystic Monastery. Jerry is with us. So welcome, everybody. It's great to have you. I'm going to start by bringing on board who's been kind of my co-pilot this weekend. This is Holly Burlett. She's the program director for SoulPlay, and we'll look forward to hearing from Holly. But I'm going to briefly introduce our other two presenters, because we've got two other people that have been real mainstays at SoulPlay. And this is Derica. And Holly, I'll let you share a little bit about Derica, because you've got a special relationship with her.
Derica, what can I say about Derica? Derica has been helping us hold the container and create intention for what SoulPlay is since its inception. She's been with us since the first event, and she is our mistress of ceremony, a reverend. She invites us into sacred space and reminds us what we're doing together and keeps us on point. and gets a little cheeky with it sometimes as needed. So yeah,
Great.
Rika,
Yeah,
thanks for being on.
I've always enjoyed your presentations at SoulPlay. And in a moment, she's going to lead our morning meditation. But we have somebody else that I'm also really excited to get to know. And this is Odessa. And I'm excited because your work in somatics, trauma informed, and social justice, they're all hot points for the awakening world and the work that I do. And Holly, anything you want to mention about Odessa?
Yeah, Odessa has also, she's a gem who has been with us for a while in different forms. And what I'd like to say about Odessa is I think we first met, or where I first remember meeting you, is definitely on the dance floor. And your work in all your somatics and trauma informed therapy, the way you embody it on the dance floor, it's beautiful to be around. And that movement speaks louder than words to me.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, thanks, Odessa.
Well, I'm really honored to be able to share some Sunday morning with all of you. And to get a reminder, everybody watching, let us know where you're from geographically. It's really fun to see where the people in our Zoom room are from. And always on Unify, we've got people from all over the world. And because it is the Sacred Sunday show, we're non denominational, or we could say multi denominational. I'm really happy that Darika, who's a minister, is going to minister to all of us with a morning meditation. So, Darika, I'm going to put the spotlight on you.
Thank you so much, Scott and Holly, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you to this wonderful global tribe and all the space and container that you hold for this consciousness in the world. So very grateful to be with you today. So I'm just going to invite you right where you are to just be in touch with your being. To just remember that you are whole and complete and perfect unto yourself, without anyone or anything or any place or any activity. And if it serves you to focus on yourself, close your eyes. Just really spend some time contemplating your own goodness, your own divinity, your own possibility. And one of the ways we ground ourselves in the ease and effortlessness of this life is by noticing our breath. Just notice it. No need to force it or control it or change it. Just notice it. Because whether you have a deep, deep practice, deep inhale or fire breath, whatever it is that you do with your breath, even when you are completely at rest, it's working with you, for you, without all your trying and doing and striving. So just take time to appreciate whatever energy, consciousness you believe animates your body. Just take time to just give thanks for just that breath. It's okay if your mind starts to wander to something that seems more interesting. Just bring it back. The breath is worth noticing. The fall and rise of your chest, the expansion of your belly. Maybe you're somewhere where you can feel the cool air, the warm air tickle your nostrils. Maybe it's early for you. Breath is still heavy in the body. What would our lives be like if we took more time to notice something so simple and yet so awesome? This action, this breathing unifies all of us everywhere. It engages us with the planet, with the plants, with the earth. It is our connection to our own divinity. This breath. Sometimes it's a reminder that we're holding too tight. And it's so much easier to let go. Because our worry and our stress has never made anything more effective. Sometimes it's a reminder that life is exciting as it quickens and our heart beats fast. And we don't judge these differences, like we don't judge the differences in these people and these places. This is the healing power that is stronger than war, stronger than pain, stronger than any force that opposes it. Just breath. Don't worry about where your mind keeps going. Don't worry, because even when you go there, you're still breathing. So it's okay. There's no bad spot in meditation. Just pay attention. The mind wants to think about what's next or what happened yesterday. And I have dominion to bring it back right now to the breath. And as we come back to this time and space, notice the connection to the breath and the body, how it animates, enlivens, quickens the flow of our entire being. And remember this harmony, this symmetry as you come back into your body, into this space, into this program, into this connection with all the like minds and open hearts and willing spirits that have gathered here today to celebrate this sacred Sunday. We come back now. We bring our breath and all of our thinking and all of our body and all of our divinity And we give thanks for all of it. And we let it be. And so it is.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
It's so beautiful to just remember to keep coming back to breath. And I chuckled every time. I think you were reading my mind, because every time I'd start to wander, you'd catch it. So I know that didn't happen for anybody else. It was just for me. Oh, thank you so much, Tarika.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Scott.
So I'm going to bring Holly and Odessa back onto the spotlights. You know, you talked about presence, at least that's what I got out of it. And so I'd just love to open it up to Odessa and Holly for a moment about maybe anything that came up for you just now during this beautiful meditation and breath and presence. Anything you'd like to share on this beautiful sacred Sunday?
The line that sticks out for me is definitely, has that stress and worry ever helped? It's like, oh man, so true. So true.
Oh, Darika, I love you so much.
I love you too, Odessa.
Thank you for that. And one of the reasons I love you is the way that you show up is so loving and so like you walk the talk of including it all. And, there's just this really beautiful gentleness you were offering us of like, it's okay. It's okay that your mind's doing the thing. And I think that kind of gentleness is, I'll speak for myself, is often lacking in my internal dialogue, So I really appreciate that invitation.
Mm-hmm. Mine too. That which we most need to learn. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
In the spirit of inclusion, I'm going to read some of the comments that have come into our chat box. Wanda, who's a regular, she comes to us from Texas, writes, "May I have this dance of life with all to celebrate one another in the present." Hugs from Wanda. And Christine writes, Gene Key 52, shadow, stress, gift, restraint, siddha, stillness. Our sacred holy breath is our best friend and keeps us connected to our eternal innocence and divinity. And our beloved Mystic Abbot Jerry writes, "It's a great day to serve the one." And he's coming from snowy Pennsylvania. I notice also from Unify, we've got people from New Zealand, Switzerland, Central Florida, New York City, British Columbia. So it's really fun. People from all over the world. Welcome, everybody. So our theme has been all about soul play. And so I'm going to ask Odessa and Darika to share, what does the Soul Play Festival mean to you? And then the second question will be, how do you do soul play in your lives the other 360 days of the year? Odessa, would you be willing to go first?
Sure. So, I've been to many a festival and retreat in my time. God, I make myself sound like an old fogey. And when I found soul play, it helps me walk this edge of expression and safety. And it does that because it is so committed to creating a safe container. And what I've learned through being a part of soul play and also through my psychotherapy practice, we we don't have full integrated whole access to our expression, our creativity, our curiosity, all of these more expansive qualities if we don't have a real clear sense of internal safety. Now, there's plenty of people in the world, plenty of us who might be in those more expanded states without having that safety, but it's not coming from a necessarily grounded or fully embodied or integrated place. And one of the things that SoulPlay really demonstrates in the structure and framework it creates for community is this commitment to safety through consent, inclusion, and belonging. And that commitment to tending to that safety allows me to have a full expression of my curiosity, my creativity, my sexuality. And I think that this is fundamental to us healing ourselves through relationship and through community, which is required. So, meaning that we need relationship in order to heal ourselves. So that's what it means to me. And then, I remember coming back from the SoulPlay we had in September, which was so special, just like this little peek out of the pandemic, this little moment of like, and really feeling this felt sense of myself being seen in community and this solidity of myself within this collective, and how much joy and potency and power was in that. And I carry that with me and try to find my way back, which has been challenging in very isolating times. But there's a little seed in there that I orient to on a daily.
I really loved so much of what you just said. And it's always, when we're at SoulPlay, it's like 4 days of heaven on earth. It's like, this is the way we want life to be, where it's safe and we're meeting new people and we're seeing old friends and we're in that beautiful environment of safety. And again, one of the things just to mention is that it's a drug and alcohol-free environment. And I always think it's just the right number of people. There's, between 600 and 800 people there. So it's, there's a fair number of people there, but it's still, there is a sense of intimacy. There's a sense, it's a very safe container. And then many people like yourself that are available to talk to if and when stuff arises. And when we feel safe is when stuff can arise. That's where we can look at our shadow side or the things that maybe we've been struggling with.
Yeah. And I'd love to add something to that. As you're saying this, I'm reflecting, safety doesn't mean that nothing bad happens. Right? Like, we're not saying that SoulPlay is this perfect container where everybody, right? Like, actually, no, what we're saying is SoulPlay is a container where repair can happen, where there's structures in place, and, we're working hard every day to improve upon that because we're not perfect. But it's a place where we strive to create the opportunity for repair when things do go awry, so that we know how to bring our relationships back into connection, and we know how to bring ourselves back into a sense of okayness.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm glad.
And I'm also really glad that Darika is here. I'm going to put the spotlight on Darika. And love to hear kind of some of your thoughts, Darika.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I love, the interplay with my sister Odessa, who is just so amazing. And
she's pretty cool.
She is very cool. Cool is for sure one of the words that always comes to mind when we talk about Odessa. And so for me, I would say SoulPlay in a very personal way represents faith. And especially since we're talking about Sacred Sunday, I have to say, being here since the beginning, really in some ways since before the beginning, when it was really an idea, and watching it grow from, 150, I guess, Holly, I don't even remember, to 600. But I think my work in the world has been about social justice and what I call spiritual activism, which is just an acknowledgement that as we do activism and justice work in the world, that we're working for something, not just against. So spiritual activism for me is about your come from. And it's been hard, right? Anti-racist work and really doing the work of oneness. And how do we do that without sort of doing spiritual bypass on the existence of racism and other isms, right? Because we're dealing, when we talk about inclusion, with all the ways in which people are excluded based upon their identity. But particularly racism is an issue that I've worked in my whole life, working within communities of color and between other communities. And this is my tribe, as it were. And I love what Odessa said, just to build on that, because what I have found here is a deep, deep commitment to not giving up, right? We're all going to make mistakes. And when I think about the distance that we've all come from where we started, it's pretty amazing. But I think when people come to SoulPlay, one of the things that they're most charmed by is the way the leadership shows up. That you are going to find Holly and Romy playing in the pool. They're not going to just be workaholics, like back in the back somewhere, not living the experience. And what I hear from so many presenters is that SoulPlay is a place where they actually go to workshops and they hang out and they relax. I relax at SoulPlay in a way that I don't. Now, I'm the opposite of Odessa. I've never been to another festival, right? But I haven't ever felt like I needed to. I've been to all the SoulPlay festivals. And, I've just watched, I talk about Holly all the time and the ways in which Holly has, she's come to me and said, hey, I want to have more people of color. I want to have more presenters of color. And even when I just didn't have the bandwidth to support her in that, she never stopped doing it. And Holly has introduced me to so many musicians and practitioners. I'm like, where did you find this amazing person? And this is what we hope for as we practice inclusion. It's the idea that people are saying, this is my responsibility. A moment happened at SoulPlay last summer that I always end up crying about something about this amazing group of people. But a moment happened last SoulPlay where Romy I was sort of kind of, turning my light down a little bit, which I never do because I'm the goddess of ceremony. So it's like big, big welcome, big, big closing. But I was having this moment where I was kind of like, well, Odessa and I and the inclusion belonging team, we're not like, we shouldn't be in the front being thanked like all the people who are, coordinating all the volunteers and doing all of these different things. We work, but like the people who show up and build the tents and all of that. And Odessa helps with everything. But I was like, I don't know if we should be on the same stage as those people. And Romy said to me, but isn't what we've been talking about making a place at the table, right? Isn't that what we've been saying this whole time, is that if we want this work, this inclusion to be centered, we have to make a place at the table. It's not just going to happen organically. And when I think about the way, as Odessa talked about, this community has held its own growth, that's faith for me, right? We're all in the world trying to figure this out. Like, what is good enough when it comes to like oneness and inclusion and racial justice and, justice for all people, oneness for all people, not oneness that's sameness, but oneness that embraces difference. What does that look like? And what it looks like is forever growing. It's forever growing. And that is an incredible thing to witness people who are committed to falling down and getting up and falling down again and getting up, because it makes it okay for me to fall down on other issues of identity, on how our trans folks feeling at the, like I've watched, Odessa bring issues, and Odessa calls me and is like, I got this issue. And I'm like, okay, I don't have to be the squeaky wheel. This is what so many people of color feel like, is that I always have to be the one to speak up. And in this community, people feel like they can speak up. right? People come to me and they're like, I don't think there's a place for it, this and this and this. And I'm like, okay, good point. Let's figure out how to make that place. Woo, that is just, it's like a little lab for the work that I'm doing in the world. And it just, you have to have a place where you're seeing it work. If you're going to have hope to be able to do this, but I have more than hope. I have faith because I'm seeing it working. And I know Holly's like, high bar, wait, like everyone's going to think we're perfect, but I'm so glad Odessa said that's not what it is. It's just the work. So I would say faith and that hope it's sustaining for me in the work that I do in the world. And I love them. I love all of you. So,
Amen. Wow. Last weekend, our whole show, all three shows, actually, and I added a fourth one, was on social and racial justice. What does it really mean? And we had some amazing presenters. If you get a chance to go back, I don't know if you have come across Reverend Ridge Feltus, who created the Remembrance Institute. She's amazing. Which Sharif Abdullah was my co-host all weekend long, and really tackling what does that really mean to have social and racial justice. And we talked about hard stuff, and I should say I listened as people of color spoke about hard stuff, and we have a lot of work to do. This show is the awakening world, and awakening is not la 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 spiritual bypass. When we awaken, we have to come to terms with choices we've made that have had hurtful consequences. We have to come to terms with inherent racism and the colonization that we've all grown up with that we just is normal. And waking up is realizing that normal is fucked up, So anyway, there you go, great. So, one of the things that we've been addressing that's kind of come up is values. And SoulPlay does have really beautiful values. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Holly for a moment. I'm going to keep the spotlight on all four of us to chat a little bit. But I'm going to go to the values page on SoulPlay and ask Holly maybe to share with us a little bit about the values of SoulPlay. And then I'd love to have, Derica and Odessa riff on that a little bit.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, definitely throughout the weekend, we have been talking about consent. That is one of the cornerstones, one of the values of SoulPlay that we really push and hold strong and really try to promote in multiple levels at the event. But there's so many other values, and we really hold them all very strongly. Playfulness, I mean, it's in our name, SoulPlay. The reason why we do all this work, is so that we could experience the joy also. It's this spectrum of expansion, and we want to feel it all. So we want to invite the playfulness also. Acceptance is super big. Acceptance of yourself and where you're at. You could only accept others as much as you accept yourself. Curiosity is the key to so much. We can meet other people with our assumptions, or we can meet them with curiosity. And curiosity always opens the door to more, where instead of judgments, where it just closes the door. Intimacy is another value. Intimacy with ourselves and others, and authenticity. These are the values that make SoulPlay and that guide us in everything.
I'm going to riff quickly, and then I want to hear from the others. But yes, on curiosity. I make my living as a relationship coach, and I've coached over 1,000 couples, and that's always what I look for, is to the degree that they're still curious about each other, it's healthy. And to the degree it's like, well, that's just Bob and he'll never change, right? And that's like the worst, right? And so, we were talking about social and racial justice, and really the key to break out of prejudice and bias is to drop into curiosity. You know, it's like we're either in judgment or we're in curiosity. And there's a playfulness, there's an innocence to curiosity that's very, very beautiful. And genuinely being curious is so important. If we can just maintain curiosity about everything, that keeps us in presence. And it's essential. So I had to riff on that, and I really want to hear from Odessa and Darika.
Well, I'll jump in because unfortunately I'm going to have to leave early today.
That's right.
So I'll jump in and one of the things that I teach, because I also do work doing corporate and educational training on inclusion. And one of the things that's a principle that I teach, and I also teach at SoulPlay, is something called cultural humility. And it was popularized by Dr. Melanie Turvalon in Oakland as a way to just remind us to be humble and curious for our entire lives, right? That it's a lifetime journey, not something we do. It's not something we achieve. It's not something like, and we sometimes mix that up. We feel we're not doing a good job at inclusion because we haven't achieved it, right? And it's a value like excellence and love and peace, right? It's not a thing that you get to. And so that cultural humility is just an acknowledgement that I don't know. I can't know. And so if we stay in that curiosity, then it's really it's a very beautiful thing about our differences. And sometimes we get caught up on language, right? Like I might talk and I see people in the chat talking about mistakes and, how we name that and we're already perfect. And I believe that, absolutely. But I think sometimes we have such a stigma on the idea of things needing to be harmonious all the time. And there's something I teach called constructive discomfort. And there's a learning edge that we lean into when we teach constructive discomfort. We're saying it's good. This discomfort, this friction that comes from engaging with other people, that quickening that happens in your body, like, oh no, I've done something that's offended someone, right? It's still a form of engagement. And if we can just take our breath again and not get defensive, because what is it that we usually do? Oh no, you misunderstood me. I think you're blowing this out of proportion and you don't know me. Some of my best friends are back in the 60s. Right? Like we just get into all of these things to try to defend ourselves. But we know that the undefended position is the place where we actually find unity with other people. And it's not, as you said, Scott, it's not easy. Right? I always tell people that feedback is a gift, even if it doesn't come in a pretty package. So when someone has the courage to tell you, I was offended by that, right? The opportunity to stay humble and curious about why, rather than shift the attention to you, either in your defense or even in your apology. Sometimes we get very effusive with that. And it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And now I feel like even as the person who's experienced the offense, I have to take care of your feelings. So it can be a lot, but it's a practice like anything else. And as we continue to practice that curiosity and that humility and all of these, the acceptance and the consent, right? Because consent is, we talk about it in terms of sexuality and gender interactions, but it's also there in the way we engage people of other races and identities. They're like, for a long time I had long locks and people would touch my hair. Right. And it's such a thing. They would touch my hair and then say, oh, wow, your hair is so amazing. And it's unintended. Right. But here's the thing. These are microaggressions or whatever. I just want you to imagine me looking at you. Right. And being like, wow, look at your hair. Wow, that's so different. Can I touch it? It's weird. It's just weird. Right. And so just take a breath when someone tells you something you may not be aware of is weird or uncomfortable or even offensive for them. So many of SoulPlay values are integral to the work I teach, and I love that integration.
thank you for, we've had a Mr. Rogers moment. Remember how Mr. Rogers would like
Yes.
teach us the word of the day?
Yes.
Constructive discomfort. I love that.
Yeah.
So thank you, Mr. Derica, Ms. Derica, for that one. Really, that's a great, great term. I'm really appreciating that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we still have a little more time before you disappear. I know you turned into
Okay.
a pumpkin 11 o'clock.
Yes.
But I want to give Odessa a chance to talk about values, and then we'll come back to you.
Yeah. Awesome.
There we go. So yeah, I mean, yes to everything Derica says, always. And my lens is trauma informed. I'm a somatic psychotherapist, and so I'm constantly thinking about what makes us capable of being in discomfort, of being curious, of being playful, of being accepting, right? And it actually comes down to a body process. And a lot of the work that I'm interested in right now is trauma informed racial and social justice, which is looking at what is our body's capacity to be in discomfort, and what's the personal work that each of us have to do in order to show up to these conversations. And a lot of what you hear, a lot of the terms that have emerged in these conversations, like tone policing and white tears and fragility, and I mean, those are the ones I can think of right now, but basically all of them have an origin in the body, in an experience that I think, and this is a gross generalization, it's not based on any research, it's based on my own anecdotal observations. I think in people who have white skin privilege, shows up as a lot of freeze. Shows up as a lot of, and the freeze is where shame happens, it's where denial happens, and it's where there's a lack of curiosity and a lack of playfulness, right? Playfulness and curiosity show up when we are in what's called the social engagement system in polyvagal theory, Stephen Porges. When we're in the social engagement system, we're relaxed, we're calm, we're regulated, we're in safety. And it's then that we have access to connectivity with other humans, play, curiosity. And when we're triggered, when we're in our fight or flight or our freeze, those capacities go out the window. Those capacities don't exist on a neurobiological level, right? So this stuff is in our bodies, it's accessible through somatic and embodiment practices. And I love that, SoulPlay's values are really giving us these different windows to find that safety, right? So for some people, like having that consent conversation and being like, okay, I have these parameters and this is going to make me feel like I can step into a little bit of edge. Whereas somebody who might be feeling a little bit more freeze in their system, like what happens if you dip into a little bit of wiggle, a little bit of playfulness, a little bit of to just unstick that, right? So there's different ways that we can move out of our kind of chronic trauma, which living under colonizer, white supremacist capitalism, we all have a collective trauma of how we engage in our power. So, finding creative ways that we can kind of unstick that to come into equitable, genuine connection. And I think that, this is my lens that I'm looking at why SoulPlay is so on the money.
I'm geeking out on what you're sharing. I really am. It's like, wow. There's something that came up for me, and I've brought all of you back on for the next question, but something that I've noticed is that when any of us go into guilt, what you said about the freeze, we go into freeze. And what happens is people who feel guilty spend a lot of time in freeze, and when we're in freeze, obviously, we aren't able to connect. We aren't able to be present. We're in freeze. And the irony is that underneath guilt is the beauty of our unmet need for care. And so a way out of the freeze that comes with guilt is to find the beauty of our care that's underneath that. I always like to say to people, hey, congratulations, you feel guilty. You're not a sociopath, right? Right? So we'll start there. But then find that you feel guilty that you don't call your mother because you care about your mother. You feel guilty about, I loved your term, white skin privilege, because you care about other people and you want there to be a change. You want there to be social and racial justice. So that's my little piece about how to unfreeze. Won't work for any of you that are sociopaths who might be watching. All right, so before we lose Darika to her church, which is a wonderful place to be going, the next question is acknowledging the suffering in the world. And, we're talking about SoulPlay. And we also recognize there is a tremendous amount of suffering in our world right now. I think all of us know people that are struggling. Maybe we're struggling. We know people that are having health issues. And then all of a sudden, a war in Europe. I mean, who thought we would hear words like that in contemporary times? Like war in Europe? No, that was a previous century. But it's happening. And it's in our face. And so in light of the very real suffering, and most of the people who watch this show are empathetic and, compassionate, how can we play? How can we have joy when there's so much suffering in the world? And so we'll start with Darika, and then I'd love to hear from all of you on this.
Awesome. Fabulous. Because we have to. Right? How else will we be able to sustain the very difficult, very important work that we have to do in the world? Like, this is the thing. One of my mentors is Reverend Deborah Johnson from Inner Light in Santa Cruz. And she talks about this thing, the fire triangle. And she talks about our work in social justice as having three pillars like a fire: oxygen, fuel, and spark, fuel, heat, fuel, and oxygen. And often they call me the irreverent reverend. I can be the heat. I can just come in and, and if you're frightened or upset about people being angry, if you're not angry at what's happening in the world right now, you're not paying attention. But it's what you do with the anger, what the come from is, right? So that spark is what gets our attention. Right? We've been doing peace marches in Oakland forever. But when I was working after Oscar Grant was murdered and, there were cars on fire, right? Nobody came to broadcast the peace marches, right? And we just have to be honest about that. That's the war is getting our attention. But the truth is we have never stopped having war on this planet. And some people are kind of a little hurt that like the war in Europe is like, oh, super crisis. But all the wars that are going on and the people who are being hurt in other parts of the world, especially people of color, haven't been in the spotlight, right? And it can be hurtful. We got wars going on in Oakland. When they did a research on the kids in Oakland, they found that they didn't have PTSD because they didn't have the P. They weren't post-traumatic. They actually are going through the trauma of war on a daily basis. So we can have judgment about what's happening in that community, but we got to have a fire, right? But we also need fuel. And that's where so many of us come in. How do we sustain the work? How do we care for each other? How do we have the somatic practices that allow the joy, as you asked, that allow for us to keep going? And then the last part is oxygen. And the other part of my reverence, I think, is the vision part. We have to, spiritual activism is about understanding what the vision is. So often we talk about justice or peace, and we don't even have a vision in our mind of what that is. So what exactly are we working towards? And I do a lot of work with people on having a vision for that. Van Jones likes to say Martin Luther King had a dream, not a complaint. right? You got to have something that's in front of you. So that is how I think about and contextualize. Joy is the fuel, right? Joy is the fuel.
Mm. Thank you for that. And, I want to own and acknowledge I'm an example of that person that the war in Europe has impacted me. I have friends in Ukraine, I have clients that are facing starvation. And I have had so much more care for that than I did for what was happening in Syria. I read about Syria, I read about Somalia. It's like, oh yeah, there's something horrible going on there. But yeah, because it wasn't in my realm in the same way.
That's okay, right? Again, I am the person who's going to be like, nobody expects you to just focus on every single war and have like donate and blah, blah, blah. But I do want people to reflect on why it's so much more in our face than other conflicts.
Totally.
Right.
Totally.
And so there's all kinds of things where people have been doing stuff. So anyway, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't have compassion in this moment or we should feel guilty. I don't really guilt, shame, they're useless, right? Because they actually paralyze us from doing the things that we need to do, right? And so I don't really trade in those things. So yay, please have compassion and love and donations for people in Ukraine. This is a very important thing to do. And at the same time, have compassion for people whose stories don't make the news.
That's right. That's absolutely.
And who are criminalized, right? For some of the very same things that we feel compassion for, right? So I could talk about that political side all day, but I won't.
No, thank you. Because it is important for us to just keep waking up, and it's like the peeling of an onion. It gets bigger and bigger. Darika, I am going to your website, and now that our awakening world audience has fallen in love with you, and they're going to want to know how they get more of Darika. Tell us a little bit about what do you provide? How do people reach you, and what are some things that you offer?
Well, so here's the interesting thing, actually, when I think about what I should have shown. So I am a minister at the East Bay Church of Religious Science. So ebcrs.org is a place where you can see me, or my Instagram, Darika Speaks, where you can see what I'm doing. That what you saw there, the website, Darika Speaks, is going to give you an introduction to more about who I am and what I say and things in the world. I have a business inclusion design group where I am hired by corporations and universities to come. But if you just want like the free access, I preach once or twice a month, and EBCRS, East Bay Church of Religious Science.org. Sorry, Scott, I should have told you that earlier, which is where I have to leave and go to, is a place where I preach frequently. And I also have a YouTube, Darika Speaks. So you can find me, Darika, Dereca, pretty much everywhere, Twitter, Facebook, or Darika Speaks on Instagram or on the web.
And do you do private coaching? Like if somebody wants private coaching?
Not at the moment, because my schedule is so busy that I can't even stay here as long as I want. But I do. Part of the reason why I preach, even though I'm the president of a consulting company, is because I want to be able, and part of the reason why, let's focus on SoulPlay, part of the reason why I'm such a part of that community is because I want to offer what I have to the world without a barrier of you got to hire my company, right? And so that's where the ministry comes in, is I show up in that space so I can interact in ways like this. And I want to say thank you so much.
Come hug Darika live at SoulPlay. We did find, thank you, Holly, for pulling it up. So here is,
Holly, you're amazing.
So there you are. How to forgive yourself.
Yeah.
About the most important thing we can start with.
That's what Odessa, thank you for the compliment, is talking about. We all need some forgiveness. And I say I'm trying to close the gaps between the pews and the pulpit, that whole idea of the sage on the stage, right? Like, no, I teach that which I most need to learn. Right. And so that's how we have to do this. And so I just want to honor you, Scott, and thank you for having me, and my beautiful, amazing sisters, Holly and Odessa. I love you so much. And I can't wait to see all of you who are watching at SoulPlay, so we can delve more into all the intricacies of being together. Thank you. Thank you so much.
beautiful, beautiful, beautiful wisdom and beautiful soul, and such a perfect, I mean, all of you are such examples of what we experience in Soul Play. Imagine being with 600 people like Holly and Darika and Odessa. So, Odessa, love to kind of hear kind of any thoughts that you want to share on anything that we've been talking about, you know.
What was the last question that we were in?
We were talking about Soul Play's values, and how, you know, those values show up in our lives and at Soul Play.
Oh, and then we were
And
talking about
finding joy.
joy piece. Yeah.
Finding joy even in the time of all the suffering.
Yeah, I'd love to piggyback on what Darika was saying. You know, for me, that question has two answers, and it's privilege and resilience. So, you know, one of the things that kind of paralyzes folks with privilege is, oh, I got it so good, and I shouldn't have any bad feelings about anything because I'm so privileged. And as a therapist, I have so many clients who say that to me on a daily basis. And it's really, it's a way that we commit violence to ourselves by denying ourselves joy and happiness, or denying that we have hard feelings because of all the privilege we walk with. And that does not do anyone any favors, anyone. I was just recently traveling in Costa Rica for 5 weeks, teaching some retreats with Co-Crea Partner Dance, and it was a retreat called Dance Your Medicine, and then doing a leadership retreat with some other leaders, and traveling around between that and visiting different communities. And let's just say it really frankly, there's a second wave of colonization, of white colonization, that's been happening in Costa Rica, of people buying land and trying to set up their own utopian things. And some of those projects are a little bit more thinking about how to integrate and benefit the people who've been living in Costa Rica for centuries, and, you know, the locals. And some projects are not. And, you know, I faced my own kind of like, ooh, what am I doing? Like in the middle of the pandemic, traveling around Costa Rica, and, you know, like, ugh, like, am I contributing to the problem, you know? And it's tricky. On one hand, I mean, this is a whole kind of complicated question, because Costa Rica's one of their main economic standpoints is tourism. And yet there's an unequal power dynamic happening. So I was walking with that, all sitting with all of that, and realizing, you know, I have this tremendous privilege. This trip is nourishing me and resourcing me and enabling me to access my joy and access my my potency, be more connected with myself and my service, so that I can continue to help and do good work. And can I hold that and really let myself have a good experience, while also not bypassing whatever impact I might be having, and staying in the question of how I can have a net good impact, right? Or how do I repair the harm that I'm inevitably going to create in a world that has unequal power dynamics? So, you know, I think I have a Capricorn rising, so I'm always going to be a little bit more in like the depths of things. And I'm always going to have this kind of like serious underbelly, but that helps me really access my joy, and like be able to walk with my privilege in a good way and enjoy it. And the other thing I'll say is resilience. And Scott, you were talking about this in terms of like finding the care under the guilt. And to me, this is Oliver, to me, you know, finding that care is part of our resilience, and being able to access our care, our joy, our positive feelings. That's resource. That is a way for us to step out of the stress complex that we will find ourselves in otherwise, and accessing that resilience, accessing those positive emotions when it's not a bypass, when it's a true expression of something, can actually fortify us for showing up to the challenging work. Right, Oliver?
Beautiful. Oh, thank you for that. And it's a constant balance, isn't it? Noticing, because all of us have our defense mechanisms, which of course can be a spiritual bypass. I do it. We all do it in different ways. And so it comes back to that thing of, finding the power of the discomfort. It's like, oh, wow, what's my edge? What's going on for me now? And, you're working somatic therapy. One of the things that I'm always encouraging when I'm working with couples, especially, notice what are your early warning signals? Before you go into the red zone, what is it, do you start to contract? Does your voice get higher? I'm sure as a coach, you notice, I can tell what's going on with people by the tone of their voice. The tone of the voice tells me when they're getting triggered, right? So it's okay, let's slow down. Let's come back into breath a little bit. And so there's so much for us to learn, and we're all learning together, which again, bringing it back to SoulPlay, is what's cool, because you kind of go from one tent to the next, learning. And then you dance it through, and then you go and you learn some more, and then you dance it through, or walk it through, or jump in the pool. So, and we have a lot to learn. Again, this is the awakening world. And we, as human beings, have a lot of awakening to do on so many levels, And so we do have to find that balance of learning and growing and playing and jumping in the pool or dancing. Yeah. Holly, thank you, first of all, for bringing these amazing people on. I really enjoyed this weekend. And what are some of your thoughts? What are some of the things coming up for you in this moment? Or in response to that question about joy versus the suffering?
Yeah. Let's see what I want to say about this. For me, I guess what feels alive and relevant right now, it's the bouncing back between the joy and the suffering. The suffering reminds me that, oh, I need to take care of myself and I need to focus on joy. And the joy reminds me there's so much suffering in this world that I need to give back. So it feels like they support each other. And just speaking with or hearing Darika and Odessa and the depths at which, just feeling their work and what they bring to this world, and how much of a blessing it is to bring all this and package it into a 4-day super potent transformational weekend for people. It's pretty amazing what we're able to do, and so potent. That word keeps coming back to me. And I guess where I am personally, I'm feeling the vulnerability in it, because while we invite participants to come for the 4 days and that is their journey, for me as program director, my journey is 6 months. And, these conversations are reminding me of how grateful I am that this is part of my job, that this is what I get to do. And wow, what a gift and what a responsibility it feels like.
Yeah.
Mm.
Both.
Yeah.
Our people have gotten to know you over the course of the weekend, and of course, our main focus is on SoulPlay. But you also work with as a course manager for Strozzi Institute. So let's get to know the other side of Holly. Tell us about that work.
Fun. Yeah. In a previous life, gosh, 12 years ago now, I was an internal auditor for a bank. I was in corporate America, and luckily I got off that train and I found this transformational work. Looked like festivals first, bringing more into the world that I know I wanted for myself, creating these environments for transformation. And recently, I just started working with Strozzi Institute, and they also offer transformation for folks. And it looks like somatics education. So helping people to find what's happening in their body, what feeling is happening, so that they could lead a more purpose-driven life, and get off the patterns that they might be stuck in. So in some ways, it's very similar to my work with SoulPlay. It's helping people feel supported and full in their lives. And I was so blessed to come across Strozzi Institute with such similar values and powerful transformation potential. So that's what I get to do with SoulPlay, where SoulPlay happens once a year. And I do all this work for the big shebang. With Strozzi Institute, we hold courses online and in person on a regular basis. So I'm getting to see in smaller bites transformation happening, and getting to be a part of organizing that.
I'm going to bring Odessa back on, and just kind of moving forward with that. So all three of us are in the transformation field. We're all in the change business. I always joke that yes, people hire me to change their spouse. But I'd love to ask both of you, being in the change business, what are your observations? How are we doing? How's humanity doing? Where are we making progress? Where are we stuck? And what are maybe any tips for transformation that either of you want to share?
I've been I've been sitting with this phrase now for several months, which is, this paradigm shift, or this consciousness evolution that we are clearly inside of right now. If it's truly consciousness evolution, it must include racial, social, and environmental justice. It just must. And I've been really grieving and been in kind of a long heartbreak in watching, as COVID has happened, as Black Lives Matter emerged, the divide in my community around this, around collective responsibility, collective consideration, collective care, and what I see as kind of a real bypass of people who are really not interested in confronting their privilege or unequal power dynamics. And it's been really heartbreaking to watch that. And I have to say that here's my Capricorn rising again, always so serious. I'm delighting to find that it's not as bad as social media has made it out to be, as my Facebook wall and Instagram has showed me, which has been so much of my interaction in community in the last couple of years because of the pandemic. It's been so isolating. And as I emerge out, as I was traveling around Costa Rica, as I'm on this call, on different calls with different communities, I'm realizing that actually, there's a lot of people who are on this page. There's a lot of people who have actually, even though we were disconnected in so many ways and isolated in so many ways while Black Lives Matter was emerging, right? While that huge cultural shift was happening for those with white skin privilege, at least, that reality has been there all along for people of color. As that was emerging, a lot of us did have the same experience. So I'm feeling heartened by that. I'm feeling like we have a lot of work to do. I'm feeling like community events like SoulPlay, healing groups, being able to be together to help ourselves contend with what our next level of discomfort is and where our next spiritual growth is, which this is all interweaving. Community and relationship and doing it together is really, really, really important. I would say essential.
Thank you so much for that. Again, so many good points you brought up, and I want to riff on a couple of them. One is that we have to look at when are we collecting evidence to support for our existing beliefs, and again, when can we be curious? Like noticing, oh, there I go again. I'm collecting evidence, because I'm in my own little social media echo chamber. And the algorithms know that I like to read the Washington Post. So they're going to send me, those articles and not Fox News or whatever it might be. And we've got to just be curious. And there has been so much polarization, Democrat versus Republican, Trump versus Biden, mask versus no mask, vaccine versus no vaccine. And if we can just when somebody has a very different belief or choice, can we drop into why they're making that choice, why they have that belief? I think that's a really big part of our work. And then, of course, the other thing that you're absolutely right on is that, boy, here we have this white privilege, and we got to look at the incredible systematic racism and the systematic destruction of our planet. We do a lot of environmental shows on the awakening world, and all my friends that are really in the know, they all say, Scott, we're way past the tipping point. We're way past it. And now we're beginning to really see. And so we're going to be living with the impact of climate crisis. It's not even climate change now, it's climate crisis for the rest of our lives. It's going to be a thing for the rest of our lives. So.
And if I could just ping back about the thing you were saying about, the echo chamber and the that whole, the belief systems and, the pandemic. I mean, there's a lot of different collective traumas, but the pandemic is one of them that we are currently in. And so I think it's also helpful in this conversation about transformation for us to consider how we might be in a trauma response right now, right? My trauma response was a lot of freeze and a lot of fear and a lot of I'm all alone, right? Like that's where I go, right? And so much, you're absolutely right. So much of how we're trying to make sense of this, like can we be gentle with ourselves? Can we be forgiving with ourselves? And like, oh yeah, wow, you're so scared. Or like, what do you need to feel safe to go into the curiosity?
While I've got Odessa here, let's take a look and learn more about Odessa and how we can connect with her. So this is her website, and it's therapywithodessa.com. I did put into the chat box, both on Unify and Facebook and our Zoom room, more information about her. But so what do you provide? How do people connect with you?
So I offer trauma-informed somatic therapy for individuals and couples. That's one of the things that I do. And the other thing that I do is offer somatic and embodied centered racial and social justice education. And my other website, odysseyhealing.com, is getting a revamp right now, which is why you're not seeing that, because I'm shifting away from some of my other modalities, and I'm shifting more into racial and social justice consultant, specifically for retreats, centers, community leaders, retreat leaders, people who have already organizations or communities that know that there's something off that they need help with. There's a lot of organizations right now that know that they need to be doing this work and don't know how to make the next steps. And I feel really passionate about helping those folks out. So that's the work I'm stepping into. And you can follow me on Instagram at embody_resilience. And that's kind of where my most up-to-date stuff is.
You know, about every 6 weeks we do shows on that topic, and I'd love to have you be on one of those awakening worlds, and you will meet some really awesome people that are doing great work in that area. So I'm going to bring Holly back on and give Holly a chance to wax poetic about you, Odessa, and then we'll kind of wrap up with a little more information about SoulPlay. But Holly, what do you want to share about Odessa or about this conversation?
Just so grateful for all she brings to the conversation. And I guess what's on my mind from the last question you asked about where do you think we stand as far as transformation goes? And it goes back to the conversation we were also having about joy. And for me, I could totally how I answer that question is totally about perspective. If I'm in joy, I could see the positivity, I could see potential. But if I'm in fear, I just see all that's crashing and burning. So is transformation happening? Are we on a good path forward? It's perspective. And also with that, the scale of change takes a long time. We've been in this cycle for a long time, and it's not going to happen overnight. Our lifetime, our lifespan is so short compared to what it's really going to take to be changed. So yes, we're putting one foot in front of the other, and yes, I could see positive things happening and growth and expansion. And on our human time scale, it's hard to really see potential, but we have to keep dreaming, right? We have to keep that vision and dream.
Beautifully stated. Well, SoulPlay. I've put into the chat box again all about joining SoulPlay, and Holly is offering a $50 coupon, but you gotta do it by tonight. You gotta register by tonight to get the $50 off. Use the code Awakening World. And again, we're gonna go one more time just to the SoulPlay Festival website. And I really look forward to seeing a lot of you there. We've been building the Global Peace Tribe over the last 2 years, and I'm looking forward to meeting a lot of you, hopefully in Cobb, in California. It's near where I live. And again, it's north of San Francisco. It's in the wine country. And just go to soulplay.co, soulplay.co. And all sorts of wonderful people are going to be there. People like you've met today, Odessa and Darika and Holly, myself. It's going to be quite beautiful. A couple of things. I want to just read a couple of comments that came in from our friends. Jeffrey Kohlberg writes, "Lovolution is the solution. Centered in the divine we grow, our soul from the peace within, with a joyful spirit connected to the universe as infinite beings." Thank you, Jeffrey. And Monica, who I think is in Sweden from Unify, writes, "Listening to you, I'm feeling called to participate and become more aware of myself. This is all that I can offer." So thank you, Monica. That's a lot. That's a lot. All right.
That's how we do it. That's how we do it.
That's how we do it. Well, I want to thank you all so much for being with us. And everybody, remember that you can share this out. If this has touched your life, share it out. Next weekend is our spring equinox really celebration. And we've got a lot of wonderful presenters. We're going to be hearing from the Evolutionary Leaders Network all about a peace and unity synergy circle where we can become very active in creating peace, not just praying for peace, which is important, but actions. We're going to hear from the Twin Ray. We're going to hear from Louisa Stowe and the Weevolution. And so we've got great things planned next weekend, so definitely join us. And last thing I always say on my Sacred Sunday show is we can make any moment sacred by choosing to see the divinity. Let's just all try and do that this week. How can we see the divinity in somebody that maybe we're judging, or a situation that we're judging? How can we see the divinity in a person or ourself, especially when we are noticing that judgmental mind? That's how we make any moment sacred. So let's all do our best to see the divine in all, to find that balance of play and empathy and compassion. And I'm grateful that we all get to learn together and grow together and to help create this awakening world. Thank you so much, Holly. I've really enjoyed this weekend with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for this community you're building and sharing and inviting us and having these conversations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Definitely would love to have both of you come in on other conversations because you both have a lot to offer. And we'll, of course, continue to promote SoulPlay for the next few months as well.
That's great. Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Namaste. Have a beautiful, beautiful day.